All right, welcome back into the Auburn Live Football Show. Appreciate everybody for joining us. We'll get into all of the Auburn, Texas A&M talk here in just a second. Quick shout out to Session Cocktails, our sponsor of the show. Session Cocktails, downtown Auburn, Magnolia Avenue, next to Taco Mama. Go check them out if you can. Happy hours, 4 to 6. Good drinks there. They got generally have some specials going on, monthly specials. They just messed with their menu, changed it up a little bit, so got a lot of good stuff there. Great, they make a great old fashioned. My current favorite there at the moment is either a Gold Rush or they have a drink called a Southern Baptist, which is really good. I can't remember. Don't even ask me what's in them because I can't remember. I don't even want to mess it up. But Gold Rush is good. Southern Baptist is good. Those are kind of probably my two go-tos at the moment. But they do great old fashions and good margaritas and stuff like that if you like that as well. So go check them out. Session Cocktail in downtown Auburn. All right, with me as always, Cole Pinkston. Cole, what's up, man?
Oh, not much. Just trying to figure out what happened. I think Session
You and
might
everybody
need
else.
to up their bourbon purchasing right now because I think people are going to be feeling that way for a while. So,
yeah, let's get into it. Auburn loses to Texas A&M 27-10 in College Station. Pretty comprehensive loss. Auburn was touchdown favorites. It kind of ballooned up to 8, maybe even 9 points there right before game time. And I guess there was a reason for that. Because Auburn ends up losing by 17. Probably about what it should have been. Auburn had a defensive touchdown there. It was kind of fluky, but credit them for making a play and Auburn getting on the board on defense. I was probably I obviously gave Auburn too much credit. I thought it was going to be 31-20. I gave probably A&M a little too much credit offensively too. Auburn's defense did a decent job outside of the big plays. But the story is, the story is Auburn's offense. The story is Auburn's offense and specifically, the quarterbacks, but really the whole thing. I've got plenty of opinions. I'm going to let you go first on. I don't know. You can kind of start wherever you want. I mean, it was 200 total yards, 3 offensive points, bunch of penalties, no turnovers, which is kind of funny. They don't turn the ball over, but everything else is a disaster. What do you make of it? You've had a little bit of time to think about it. What's kind of your reactions now thinking about what we saw in College Station?
Honestly, your comment just now about the no turnovers kind of brings a point to my mind with Peyton Thorne. You may remember I said that to me, he doesn't feel dangerous. I felt that way. Okay.
Yeah.
I still feel that way. He's not turning the ball over. He's playing everything way too safe, in my opinion. Scared to push it down the field, scared to throw it to this read. There's no confidence there. And it's bad. It's about as bad as I've ever seen. I don't know why. I don't really know why. I think I tried to explain this on the board the other night. It didn't, it's about 50% one way, 50% the other way. That's kind of how it's going right now. Everybody's split on what they believe in, what they want to, what side they're on or whatever. But the way I see it is it just seems like he's not gelling with this offensive game plan and the play call. I don't know why it is. You don't go from throwing 6,000 yards, 6,000. I mean, you're telling me that's a guy that just can't do it? I don't believe that. If maybe he can't do it at Auburn because of what's going on with the play calling. Maybe he never will be able to. Obviously, hadn't shown it yet. But I find it hard to believe that he's just so uncomfortable with everything, and I don't know the reason why. But it is that it is. That's what it is. I've gone through a half of the plays. First half, all 5 offensive drives there. There were some good drives. 10-play drive, 5 first downs was drive number 3. Drive after that was like 7 or 8 plays, 3 first downs. It's not like the offense wasn't moving the ball. They just got in their own way really, really bad. And to me, it all started with Thorne and his uncomfortability with everything. Saw several times where he should have thrown the football. There were other times when he didn't have enough time to do it. So it's a conglomeration of things, but I think it all starts with Thorne.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Hugh Freeze said after the game, he stopped short of, he was asked about the quarterbacks, and he said, I need to watch the film. I'll have more answers for you on Monday. And that was fair. And I'm curious to hear what he says on Monday. He's generally pretty candid.
Yeah.
I don't know. When you're watching it, I don't pretend to be. I'm not Hugh Freeze and Philip Montgomery. Those guys have forgotten more offense than I know. And when you're watching the plays, there's so many things that go into a play working and not working. But when you hear Hugh Freeze say, our quarterback is not keeping his eyes downfield, that's something that stood out to me. That's a pretty specific criticism that is not good when you hear about a quarterback. When you hear somebody say the quarterback's not keeping their eyes downfield, that is a scary thing to hear, because they're either worried about the rush. Most of the time, that's what that means. They're worried about the rush, and they're thinking, well, I got about a second and a half, and then I got to start moving and avoiding pressure. And so that's generally what that means. Peyton Thorne was certainly under plenty of pressure. He was sacked 6 times. A&M had 15 tackles for loss in that game, but he was getting pressured plenty. But that was a concerning thing, is him not keeping his eyes downfield and delivering the football. I didn't see every route. You can't see everything on TV in terms of guys open. There were definitely guys open. There were other times where I thought A&M had it covered up pretty good. There's other times where it looked like Peyton Thorne kind of had locked onto either a receiver or a side of the field that was covered up. And if he could have gotten maybe to a different read, or there was another guy open, but he didn't get there. And so then, so he kind of locked in, and then there was pressure. And so I don't know. I don't know how he's supposed to be going through those reads and things like that. But when Freeze says his eyes aren't staying downfield, that's a problem. I mean, he was a little bit inaccurate, right? Missed what could have been a touchdown early in that game to Jay Fair. I don't know if it would have been. A&M had a couple guys that could have had an angle, but either way, it was a big play. It maybe could have been a touchdown. I mean, it would have gotten him down there really close if Jay Fair wouldn't have scored. That's a big play. But yeah, the keeping the eyes downfield is man, that's an issue, and it's a scary thing. It makes me think back to, I don't know when the last time I heard that criticism about a quarterback specifically. I mean, honestly, the past couple of years, it hadn't been an eyes downfield thing. It's been, under Harsin, it was, I think you had quarterbacks that just didn't fit what you were trying to do, period. Robbie, TJ, those guys didn't, even Zach Calzada, that now you're seeing some of the success those guys are having elsewhere, and you're like, okay, they weren't good fits for what Brian Harsin was trying to do. But man, that it makes me think. I can go all the way back to the Kyle Frazier days and the Clint Mosley days, where that was a problem. When those guys started to not look downfield and they worried about the pressure, it was over. It was done with. The offense is a disaster if your quarterback is not keeping his eyes downfield and looking for plays to make. Man, that's a scary thing to hear.
He's not a big lever of the pocket. He's not big on that. He likes to sit in there and he likes to throw it and he likes to be comfortable. The difference in Connor Wegman for Texas A&M, I don't even talk about Max Johnson here because he didn't really get pressured all that much from what I could tell. Connor Wegman did. Connor Wegman went out of the game because of a shot he took from Jalen Simpson on a blitz, and he still stood in and threw a completion on that play. Auburn dials it up almost every passing situation, and he didn't have a problem. That's the difference. You can watch Peyton Thorne and watch his eyes and look where he's looking probably 80 to 85% of the time, and he's looking at he understands what he's looking at. You can see where the read is. You can see that he's about to make a good play, and then he just doesn't. He doesn't make it. He holds it too long, or he he ducks his head and he sort of falls into the pocket where things are closing in. And the hardest thing in the world with these games is to figure out who's to blame. I think that is the hardest thing for the fan to do in this game. Now, there's a lot of blame being thrown around, but we don't always know. And as much as you can study it, sometimes it's even hard to tell then. So, number one, I'm really glad that Hugh Freeze didn't try to assess things without looking at the film, because that's the most important thing. And I'm really, really interested to see what he says on Monday in that regard. And number two, I've talked 100 times about what Peyton Thorne brought to Auburn from Michigan State, and it was being in control of the offense was my number one thing. Right now, he's not, and it's because he's not trusting what he's seeing, and it's that's not good. I called him not dangerous. Well, playing it safe is dangerous right now. You got to take some risks. He's worried about turning the ball over. He's very worried about that. You can tell.
Which is weird because, 1 week ago, he was careless. Against Stanford, he was careless in those 2 picks. He was too aggressive. He was too gung ho about trying to make a play.
Yeah.
And we kind of talked about that, like what went into that. And I even tried to find a silver lining in it. Like, well, at least he feels like he can take a chance, right? Like, that's good. I don't know if he did that because it was at home. I don't know if he did that because it was Stanford and he felt like they can overcome it. But yeah, it was different. It was different on Saturday against A&M. He was not the confident type of gunslinger that you sort of want and need him to be. It was the criticism going into Stanford. It was when I talked to people about him, it was inside the program. It was like, we need him to relax and play. And that's not what happened on Saturday. And look, he's mobile. He had a good game running against Stanford. I don't know if the A&M game, I don't know if he was thinking about using his legs more than he should have been. I don't know if he was thinking, hey, I'm going to do a couple reads, and then if it's not there, I'm going to look to run. And maybe he needs to trust the routes and trust the scheme a little bit more, and I don't know. And then in the SEC, it's different, right? Stanford, you could take off or things like that. A&M, that front, their lanes are not going to be there in the same way. And credit A&M, I thought they had a pretty good defensive game plan for the RPO stuff. I mean, they were attacking the RPO stuff. They were like, we're not going to let you make the decision. We're going to make it for you. To me, it looked like their defensive line was coming, and then they'd bring somebody off the edge. If you pull it, that's fine. We're gonna have 2 people come. Like, you're not going to make the right decision because we're going to cover you both up. Auburn started to go a lot more motion, and where they would motion guys into the formation that they want to run anyway, but they would do it from a different set so that A&M couldn't completely be prepared right off the bat. So I thought Auburn tried to do some things there. I mean, when you have a failure as bad as what that loss was, it's everybody's fault. I mean, it's, you look at 6 sacks and 15 tackles for loss, it's offensive line. When you look at 6 for 12 passing for Peyton Thorne, that's a quarterback issue. There's certainly a play calling and scheme issue when you can't put things together. I mean, the drives are incredible, man. They had a 32-yard drive, 32-yard drive. The second drive of the game, 7 plays, 32 yards. They didn't have another 20-plus yard drive until Robbie Ashford's drive in the fourth quarter. They went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 drives where they didn't go beyond 19 yards in the middle of that game. At one point, they had a stretch where they had about 32 plays and 33 yards in that stretch. They had like a stretch where they were basically averaging a yard a play for about 33 plays. You can talk about talent all you want. That's not talent. That's not talent. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. That's sort of the biggest talking point. And look, Hugh Freeze introduced this. Hugh Freeze went out there and said, he made it a point to tell everybody last week that Auburn doesn't have the talent that Texas A&M does, that they don't have the talent some of these other teams do. Nobody asked him about talent last week. He made it a point to go there. He wanted to make sure that the fans knew, hey, guys, we're not there yet. He was trying to lower expectations. Now, you can like that approach or not like that approach. You can say it's making excuses or whatever. There is truth. Obviously, Auburn's talent isn't where A&M's is on paper. It's not. But Hugh Freeze introduced this by saying that there's a talent issue, kind of creating an excuse beforehand. What we saw Saturday, and I absolutely stand behind what I said on Twitter that blew up in the middle of that game. That is what I saw was way beyond talent. Talent, yes, but what happened Saturday was if that's the talent gap, it is way bigger than anybody thought. But I don't think it is. I don't think it is. You're not going to tell me that Rivaldo Fairweather is not capable. Jay Fair is not capable. Shane Hooks isn't capable. Gunnar Britton, Dylan Wade, you're not going to tell me that you don't have capable players. I mean, you're just not going to convince me of that. I mean, I mentioned in something I wrote, Auburn with Will Friend and Carnell Williams and Ike Hilliard cobbling together an offense with a running quarterback and a playbook that they didn't even understand, like terminology they didn't even completely get last year. They go on the road and put 33 on the board in Starkville. They scored 13 offensive points against that same A&M team with a running offense. They somehow manufactured 27 points last year against Alabama. Like a lot of the same guys, actually better talent, more weapons at wide receiver, a more capable quarterback that can do a little bit more. And you would think better play callers in Freeze and Montgomery. So you're just not going to convince me that talent is what happened on Saturday. I don't know what percentage the blame lies. If is it more on the quarterback? Is it more on the play calling? Is it execution? Is it the penalties, the holding, the false starts that killed some drives? I think it's everything, but it's dang sure a lot more than talent, what we saw. And my biggest concern is you're third away. The season is a third of the way finished. You realize that? A third of the season's done. And Hugh Freeze is up there saying, I have no idea what our identity is, and I have no idea what the answers are. That's not talent. Again, that is not talent. You had summer, you had spring camp, you bring some guys in summer, you had fall camp. You've had 4 weeks, and you're going, I don't know if you don't know your identity, that's literally the foundation. It doesn't get any worse as an offense than saying, I don't know what our identity is. That's the number one thing you better know. And to me, that's coaching. That's understanding, all right, at the bare minimum, who are our players? What are they good at? What are they not good at? Now I then can go call plays and run an offense around that. If you don't know that you don't get to come out and go, well, guys, we don't have a lot of talent. We don't have a lot of talent, you know. You don't even know what your identity is. And that's, to me, that's coaching. And that's my biggest concern is 4 weeks in, not even knowing what that should be.
Yeah, I come away from the whole talent discussion going, yeah, they got you on a few guys, but really and truly the glaring position is quarterback, and it really doesn't go too much further than that, I don't think, because Auburn's offensive line had success in the run game. The second drive that you pointed out that was one of Auburn's best drives of the day, 6 runs in a row. 1 pass play in that drive. So, I don't think the offensive line is all that much worse than their defensive front was, at least on Saturday. Until you get to the pass rush, that's when things got kind of ugly. But A&M was sitting in the house, and why shouldn't they? Absolutely should. Why not? You can play man coverage, you can play zero coverage without a safety. There was no threat that Auburn was going to be able to throw it downfield. That's how you call plays against an offense like that that's struggling, and that's good on Texas A&M's part for that. I go back to the game plan against California that I didn't like, and I was somewhat critical of because I felt like they were playing it safe against Cal. It's almost as if they went into the game thinking we are the more talented team. We can dial things back and try to be kind of safe and keep it on the ground and run the clock and get out of here, and that didn't happen because of mistakes and turnovers. That's the kind of stuff you don't account for. The turnovers, anyway. You come into A&M, I feel like the game plan was more attacking. I feel like the game plan was pretty good. I like the play calling. Some interesting route concepts, more trips, more open it up, more space. I think I gotta I said that I felt like things were a little too condensed at times in the run game. And what they do, they have it all spread out. And then to run the ball, they bring them in with motion or shifts. So they fixed that. And the run game was not bad for that reason. Of course, they got in a situation where they couldn't do that anymore. And then when you put Robbie Ashford in, I feel bad for the guy because they're going to sell out on the run. That's what you do when you see number 9 comes in the game. They practice it all week. Hey, number 9's in the game. Let's get 10 in the box. Let's see if they can stop this. Okay, then they sell out when he comes in, and you can't get a good read on what Robbie Ashford can really do with this offense because of that. So, again, thought the game plan was good this week. It was some of the worst execution I've seen, and I'm still trying to completely wrap my head around why that is. But I'm with you that I don't think it is it's just because of this huge talent gap. I thought that Auburn hung in there with them pretty well in a lot of different areas, and handled the defensive front in the run game way more than I expected them to. Again, the glaring issue comes at quarterback. They had a guy that was confident. Auburn did not, and that made all the difference. I don't care, how accurate he may be, how good he may be, whatever the case. If you're not confident, then the game is going to look like that.
And I mean, what's wild is if there's people out there that think that this is an overreaction after one game, I actually don't think so. I think that the offense and what we saw in A&M, I don't think people. I mean, go back and look. It was maybe worse than you think it was. People are looking at the score and they're thinking in their head, 27-10 offense wasn't great. No, 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 no. That offense scored 3 points. And the only reason they scored 3 points is because they started a drive at the Texas A&M 44-yard line, and they went 8 yards. Now, they had a sack right there that pushed them back. So they were a little bit closer. I think that might have been the drive that they got to the A&M 31. That's the closest they got. The A&M 31. It's the closest they got to the end zone. And then that drive, they took a sack. Alex McPherson bails them out, hits a 53-yarder. That's their only points. An 8-yard drive that started in A&M territory, and they got a field goal. That's it. If not for that great field position, that might have been a game where Auburn's drive chart would have been 10 punts and then downs at the end of the game. That's it. That's their job. The field goal is the only thing that breaks up 10 consecutive punts from start to finish, and then turning it over on downs at the end because you're down and you got to go for it. We might be underselling how bad that performance was. They had 200 yards of offense. 90 of them came in the last 2 drives. When Robbie Ashford's playing pickup ball and at that point, A&M's defense is playing differently. At that point, they're going, let's just end the game. Let's get out of here. We're not going to be super aggressive. Let's make sure we don't give up any big plays. And Ashford and that offense played a little pickup ball, made some plays. And then by the last drive, it didn't matter. It's 27-10. Holden Gerner comes in, and they drive 44 yards or so. And at that point, that's for sure a kind of a prevent defense. But half the yardage came in the last 2 drives of the game. 3 yards of play, I think, is what Auburn averaged in that game. So if you think it's an overreaction, I don't. I think we could be underselling how pitiful that performance is. And the question I have for you, Cole, and you're going back and watching it, and I think this is one where I'm gonna toss the question out because I don't know the answer, but I'm hearing what Hugh Freeze has said recently, which is we need to get Jeremiah Cobb more touches. Now I'm curious. I'm curious if we can ask Jeremiah Cobb I don't know what the deal was. Jeremiah Cobb touched the ball one time. I don't know if he was hurt. I don't know what happened. I don't know if they thought on the road SEC, maybe there's some things he doesn't quite know yet, and so we're a little uncomfortable. That was surprising. One touch. Something's up with that. You can't 1 week ago say Jeremiah Cobb needs to get more touches and then go on the road and he gets 1. So I don't know what happened there. But a week or 2 ago, you hear him talk about Jay Fair and Javaris Johnson. Best 2 receivers. Great route runners. Got to get them the ball. Jay Fair's first touch was in the 4th quarter. Your best receiver touched the ball for the first time in the fourth quarter. Now, the wheel route was supposed to go to him. That should have been hit. But other than that, he I don't even know if he got a target before that. I mean, now if you're Freeze, you're saying, hey, we dialed some stuff up and it was open and our quarterbacks didn't throw. And that's where I'm kind of saying that could very well be true. There could have been other chances in the middle of that game where they thought Fair was open or somebody else, whatever. But Rivaldo Fairweather, I mean, what did he finish? Fairweather, 3 catches, 5 yards. 3 catches, 5 yards for Rivaldo Fairweather. Shane Hooks 3 for 18. And then Fair had finally had a 10-yard grab in the fourth quarter. So my question is, when you're going into that game and first when you're struggling, can you not dial up some stuff specifically for these guys? Can you not simplify something and go, okay, I need to isolate Jay Fair. I need to isolate Rivaldo Fairweather. I need to isolate Shane Hooks. Get them on the side by themselves. Run a dig route. Run a stop route. Something. I need to isolate them and get them the football. And there's none of that either. We hear Freeze talk about targeting these players, and then nobody gets any passes. And again, you go back to 6 sacks, you go back to tackles for loss and stuff that could have affected that. Hugh Freeze could be sitting there going, I dialed up a play that Jay Fair was open, but we got sacked, or Peyton Thorne didn't keep his eyes downfield. And so that very well could be happening. So it's kind of a caveat, but targeting guys specifically, how do you make that happen if everything else is collapsing around you?
Well, it makes me wonder now, I don't know what the intent of the game plan is. I'm just speculating when I say that. When I said that the game plan was safe against Cal, I'm speculating. I don't know. I'm not in the huddle. I'm not at practice. I don't know. I can only speculate, but it makes me wonder, is it a thing of, the game plan was a little bit more diverse this week against A&M. There was obviously some things that I have not seen on film. I thought there was, they introduced the split zone run play, which is a totally new scheme, especially with a guy like Brandon Frazier, who was in there a lot, running that position, the key block on that play. And I'm just giving an example, but things like that. Is it possible that they go, some guys don't understand what they're trying to do? I mean, is that a possibility? And I'm just asking. I don't know because again, totally confused here about what's going on. I don't know. Is that the case? If that's the case, then people who know what to do are the people who play. Always. That will always be true in college football. In football, you can go to high school football. If you got a guy that doesn't understand everything that you want to try to call because you think you can get the defense on a certain scheme, they're not playing. You got to know what you're doing. And I don't know. I'm just, again, speculating. Is it possible that the game plan was too much based on what they've done at practice? Did they try to put in too much? Was it too much for Peyton Thorne? Was it too much for a freshman like Jeremiah Cobb? So I'm sort of answering your question with a question, but that's kind of, where we're at right now. I mean,
yeah,
this is a show of speculation today. I want to make that very clear because we can only tell you what we see on TV, like you're watching it, especially in an away game. Even when we're in the box, we can only tell you what we saw on the field and not what was said in the huddle, not what has been going on at practice all week. That's a really important piece of everything to me. Because you don't know what goes on. You don't know how a guy, hears a play and then executes it at practice. He may not be able to. And then you're in a conflict in the game as a coach. Do you go, well, he couldn't get it right all week. Do I try him here? I mean, I don't know. I just think there's a lot of conflict like that going on. That's my speculation. I don't know for sure. But I want to believe that. Can I just point out one positive thing real quick?
No, not allowed. Only negative today. I'm just
I
kidding.
do think Auburn's got a good defense. I do believe that. I think they're about as good as they can be for what the talent level is.
Yeah.
I think Ron Roberts has gotten the most out of them. I still believe that after this game. Obviously, they can't hold on the whole game, so they give up some big plays there at the end. But, man, they played about as well as you can ask. They really did. So that's good. And honestly, think about this: if Auburn hits that wheel route out and up or whatever it was to Jay Fair there that Peyton Thorne airmailed, is the game different? I mean, it could be. You know, you're talking about one play that could have made at least somewhat of a difference in the first half. So, if you're just missing on some big things like that and it was schemed open, that gives you a little bit of hope or a glimmer of hope that it can be done again and that, they could pull it together. I don't know if that's true or not, but at least there's a glimmer there, I think.
Yeah, I was looking. It looks like that was the very, very beginning of the second quarter. It looks like a 2nd and 15 play from the A&M
Yep.
41, incomplete to Jay Fair. So your 2nd and 15, obviously 2nd and 15, so there must have been a false start or something right before that. Some
No,
kind of
it
penalty.
was a play action. I got it scripted right here. Play action pass to Rivaldo Fairweather, then went for 3 yards.
Right. They were 1st and 18. So they're 1st and 10, and
It
then
was a
they got,
holding.
yeah.
Holding on, it was holding on Gunnar Britton, which it's kind of my policy not to talk about calls after a game because it is what it is. When they call it, it's over. But terrible call on that one. Shouldn't have been called holding. And RG3 agreed with me on the broadcast.
Yeah, there were a couple. The other really, really bad one was the one called on Jarquez after a Peyton Thorne run right there in the middle of the field. It was let's see, he was like a 6-yard rush. Let's see. Yeah. 2nd and 10 at the midfield with 9:28 in the second quarter. That was another one. Peyton Thorne ran for 6 yards. It would have been 3rd and 4, and they call a holding on Jarquez that was garbage.
That was bad too. I thought.
And it killed the drive. It went from 3rd and 4 to whatever the next one's going to be. It pushed them back. They end up having to punt. But there's another chance where they're trying to drive, and it got taken away. So you're right about the defense, and I wrote about that in the 3-2-1. Like, hey, let's start with a positive, and that is, I think most people would look at Ron Roberts now and say, okay, so far, better hire than I thought. And I'm not, if you thought he was a great hire, that's awesome. I'm not saying, but I think a lot of people were like, who? The guy that just got let go at Baylor, like,
yeah,
of all the defensive coordinators, like, a journeyman. I think people are just kind of like confused. Like, is this the guy? This is the best guy. This is the guy. But so far, I think he's doing his job. And you're right. I mean, given the circumstances, the defense played fairly well. The big plays are a concern. I mean, you gave up a 79-yard run. That was a brutal one. Back-breaking type run. You gave up some big plays. I mean, half their rushing yards, by the way, were 2 runs. They had a 79-yarder and a 36-yarder. Over half their rushing yards were 2 runs out of 33. That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
I mean, you have big plays account for chunks, but for 2 of the 33 rushes to account for half is wild. I thought other than that, I thought Auburn did a very good job. It's probably not just the defense, but the way the rush defense has been, even against Cal, even against A&M, probably the biggest surprise in a positive way. I think that was my biggest concern, was not just the defense, but the rush defense in the front. I was like, boy, I don't know if they're going to hold up. I thought they held up against A&M and stopped a lot of runs
sure did.
for 3 yards or less. I thought they did their job. What killed them right there was that third quarter. Max Johnson coming in, going back up. Now, Max Johnson's a good player, by the way. Like, it's not like you bring in a backup that's a slouch. Max Johnson's a talented kid. He goes 7 for 11, 123 and 2 touchdowns, and just shredded Auburn's secondary in those couple of drives. Too many guys were running open. That was probably the only part of the game, and it's what caused the separation in the game. But those couple of drives where all of a sudden guys were just open in the secondary, wide open. I don't know what was going on in those couple of drives there.
Well, it goes to show you how important the quarterback position is and how much it means to the outcome of a game, right? Yeah. I mean, if you're talking about talent, you could match up at every single position, but if you don't match up at quarterback, you're probably going to lose. I mean, 9 times out of 10, unless you get lucky and get like 10 turnovers on defense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just impossible to win these games without a quarterback, especially with, you know, A&M. I give their defense credit again. They took away the RPO. They played close to the line of scrimmage. They took away this kind of stuff. And in some ways, that's why Auburn had some success in the run game, because they sold out a little bit to the screens and the, and the quick throws that they were doing against UMass a week ago that Peyton Thorne looked so good on and comfortable. They took him out of his comfort zone. And that was a recipe for disaster for Auburn's offense. So I do credit Texas A&M's defense. I think they deserve some credit. Texas A&M's probably looking at Auburn fans right now and going, "Hey, I mean, do we not get any credit for stopping you guys, or is it just y'all's offense is terrible at Auburn? Is that all it is?" I think I give them some credit, and I give a lot of, discredit to Auburn's offense too. So it's both. I think both are true. But there's just the glaring. I mean, again, the glimmer is that you see some plays were schemed open for touchdowns. At least 2 that I saw in the first half already. Could have been 6 points. And the bad thing is that how are they going to get that right? How are they going to get somebody in at quarterback if it's not Peyton Thorne? Who is it? Because you don't feel great about Robbie Ashford being able to make some of those plays, and we don't really know what to expect from Holden Geriner. I surely don't. I thought it was interesting that they did give him a try, though. They gave him a try. He definitely has the best body language of the 3. I will say that much.
Yeah. I mean, that and I do want to talk about that. I was quickly looking back at this whole talent question, because I just think it's so out of context. I think, yes, Auburn's at a talent deficiency, but they're just not at the type of talent deficiency that results in what you saw. I mean, UAB, I watched a little bit of that game. UAB had 21 points, and I think they had 300 plus yards on Georgia.
When I saw
I'd be pleasant. I wouldn't say shocked if Auburn gets 21 on Georgia based on what we just saw. I'd be really damn surprised. Like, you talking about talent issues, and it's just like, really? So you're going to tell me you think UAB has better talent than Auburn? Absolutely not. And that's not the case.
right.
So there's just, I mean, I get it. Auburn's lacking some talent at some positions, but there's some good players out there that just that you got to take advantage of. All right, the quarterbacks, you brought that up, and that's something else I mentioned on the corner. And I'm going to be honest with you. I think I probably am in the minority on this based on what, some other people's opinions. And I tossed out there, what would you have done? It's 20-3. Would you have pulled Peyton Thorne and gone to Robbie Ashford, or would you have kept Peyton Thorne in? I am on the boat of Peyton Thorne should have stayed in the game. I know it was ugly, and he was struggling. But you've got a guy that did not run this offense at Michigan State. This is a new offense. For years at Michigan State, he didn't run this. He hasn't run a semblance of this since high school. He arrived in the summer. He didn't go through spring ball. He arrived in the summer. You've got summer workouts. You've got fall camp. Okay. Then he plays against UMass. Doesn't even play all game because you blow UMass out. Robbie had a bunch of snaps in that game. Then you play Cal. There's 55 total snaps in the Cal game, and Robbie played probably, 15 to 20 of those. So now you're talking about your first Power 5 game in this offense. Peyton Thorne played maybe 40 snaps, maybe. Then you play Samford. I mean, with all due respect, we talked about that. It's Samford. It's not a good barometer. And then you play your second Power 5 game, and early in the third quarter, you pull him again. I understand, hey, I'm trying to win. I need a spark. I need to create a spark. Robbie deserves a chance. I get it. I do. If Robbie's doing what he's supposed to do, and you're going, gosh, Robbie's sitting there. I mean, doesn't Robbie deserve a chance to give this offense a spark? I get that. I get that thought process, and I don't have a problem if you say yes. But if last week you're standing up there in front of the media, which Hugh Freeze did, and you're saying Peyton Thorne gives us the best chance to win. Peyton Thorne understands the offense the best. He understands where receivers are supposed to be. He knows if they don't run the right depth. He gets what we're trying to do. Those are all Hugh Freeze's comments, clearly saying he has the more thorough understanding of what we're trying to do than anybody else. And then you go out there and with very limited practice, just fall camp, and limited game time because he hasn't even played a full game, and the other, you keep pulling him. How is he going to get better? How in the world are you going to fix decision making or work on trying to figure out your identity if every time now in the only 2 Power 5 games, both times it's been a struggle, you yank him? To me, it's 20-3. It's 20-3 at that point. Just fight through it. Say, Peyton, you're the guy. Get your shit together. We're going to get our shit together. We're going to figure something out in this game. We're not going to let this game be a waste. Don't you walk out of this game with A&M going, what a complete waste. You pulled Peyton Thorne, so you didn't figure anything out with him. You put Robbie in. He went what? What did he throw? He completed 1 ball, overthrew a few. Robbie went 1 for 4 yards. So what'd you figure out with Robbie? You put Robbie in and did what? You played backyard football for a drive. It's not like you were like, oh, when Robbie was in there, things really clicked. No, he had a good drive, but it was a mixed mash of stuff. It wasn't really anything that you're like, whoa, Robbie looks good. They just made a few plays against the defense that at that point was probably playing conservative. I just feel like you come out of that game going, well, we rotated 3 quarterbacks and learned nothing. I don't know anything. At worst, leave Peyton in there, fight through it. Maybe you get beat 30-3. But maybe you wasted most of a third quarter and the entire fourth quarter where you could have had Peyton Thorne in the game going, we're going to figure something out. A play, a formation, a rhythm, a scheme, something. We're going to roll you out next time. We're going to roll you out and see how that works. We're going to just let you target one guy, and if it's not there, check it down. Something. Work through everything. And I just feel like you wasted a quarter and a half against a good team, a good Power 5 team, that you could have worked on stuff with Peyton Thorne because you pulled him out again. That's just kind of how I look at it. And maybe that means I'm giving up on the game. If you leave him in, maybe that looks like you're just not even trying to win. Maybe. I mean, I don't think that's the case. I think you're thinking, if Peyton Thorne is my guy and I want to have a chance to beat Ole Miss or LSU or Mississippi State or Vanderbilt or Alabama at the end of the year, this guy's got to improve. And I got to figure out if he's going to improve or not. So I don't like pulling him in Cal, and I don't like pulling him in this game. Like, stick with him and get reps and experience and run some stuff and get a more thorough understanding instead of yanking him after 2 quarters. That's just kind of where I'm at with that.
No, I think you make some good points. But I'm also going to go the other way on a couple things. I think that Peyton Thorne. Now, I'm with you. I don't like the yanking him and all that. And the way that they did it in the Cal game was wrong, in my opinion. I felt like he got a much better chance at success in this game, number one, and much longer, too, than he did with Cal. I don't think the way that they substituted Robbie Ashford in with him in the Cal game was just not going to help Peyton Thorne in any way if he's your guy.
Yeah.
Okay? Not helping him, especially with his confidence issues. That's really going to hurt it, okay? So, evidently, they picked up on the confidence issues and said, okay, we're not going to give the threat that Robbie Ashford could come in at any time. And he didn't. He got all these drives. It was all him. I don't think there was a threat. We weren't in the box, and I don't know if Robbie was wearing his helmet or whatever the case on the sideline, but, it was his show, I thought. So I actually, at the time, felt like when they substituted Robbie Ashford in, I thought it was okay. I felt okay with it. I really, at that point, it's desperation. You're just trying to figure anything out, and that's what they're doing. And I do think there's a principle. I think there's a principle here, too, with Peyton Thorne. Hey, it was your show today. You didn't get it done. Things are starting to get out of hand, and we gave you an adequate amount of time. It's time to make a change. I think there's a principle there as far as a coaching, a stance as a coach goes with your quarterbacks, and an understood you're gonna have to perform. I don't care if it was your fault or not. There's a principle here, and I'm gonna make a change when I feel necessary. So I agree with that part. The other thing is, I don't think Robbie Ashford got a fair shake in that game because they're already selling out to the run. They've practiced all week. Hey, if number 9 comes in, you know what to expect. Well, now he's in to get a full drive. Well, I mean, we'll see if he can stop this blitz first before we try anything else. And you're not going to get a good look at what Robbie can do that way in that situation. I'll give Robbie this. At least he threw the ball. He took a couple shots. He didn't sit there and look at it too long. He targeted and then he threw. And I was okay with that. I thought Hosengerner did the same thing. Because one of the reasons, because neither one of them had anything to lose, in my opinion, at that point.
Yeah, if you get put in at that point, and then your conservative coaches are going to be like, listen, put you in because we're desperate. I don't need you to go in there and be conservative too.
And I'll say this about Robbie Ashford right now. He plays like he's got nothing to lose. I can appreciate that right now. I absolutely can appreciate that right now. He's the more dangerous option. But if your quarterback, if Peyton Thorne's going to play like that and he's going to be safe and he's going to make all these decisions and hold on to the ball and I'm not going to force it in anywhere because I'm too worried about it, put Robbie in. If that's the case, because Peyton Thorne ain't helping you. He's not. I'd rather go with the guy that'll try something. You know what I mean? The guy that will at least be a little bit dangerous. I can't take the safe play. I mean, you gotta take some risk in this game, man. And he just wasn't doing it. I don't know. Maybe they're coaching him to do that. Maybe they're saying, look, we got to live to play another day. You got to be as safe as possible. Again, this is all speculation. But at this point, if it's going to be that bad, you might as well put Robbie Ashford in there and say, well, all right, well, you're kind of the guy that seems to act like there's nothing to lose. Go get him. I don't know. I again don't know what the right answer is, but that's sort of my take on those points.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just wanted to make up their damn mind. I mean, I think when you bring Robbie in, I was trying to look at the drive chart to see when Robbie in. It looks like he came in second drive, third quarter, because he threw a pass to Jair Shorter that was a bad pass. It wasn't. He led him too far. I think that pass. I think he was in there at that point. Like I think that he had been inserted in, and so I think. And then Auburn went on a stretch of. I think of that drive, Robbie's first 3 drives, I think, were 9 plays for negative 16 yards. And then that was coming off a Texas A&M touchdown. But I mean, if you leave Peyton in, it doesn't get any worse. I mean, they had to start the second half. Auburn went 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. Okay, so and a couple of those were Robbie's drives. So you leave Peyton in because guess what? Then the defense came up with that touchdown out of nowhere, and all of a sudden you're going, okay, it's 20-10. Are we back in this thing? Well, guess what? When that happened, you had already pulled Peyton Thorne like 2 drives ago.
Yeah.
So then you toss Robbie out there, and they went 45 yards, and they ended up having to punt. You just never know. I just feel like you work through some of that stuff, and then maybe it's 20-10, and maybe the drive or 2 before you started to find something with Peyton, maybe whatever it is. And then when that opportunity comes, you have a chance to take advantage. I do agree when you put Robbie in. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't see Robbie running if the offense you want to run is what we've seen, that's Robbie's not better than Peyton. Freeze has said that. I see the same thing, obviously. So if you're going to bring Robbie in, do something different. I'm not saying you got to run what you did with Will Friend, where it's just toss sweeps and you're running the ball 75%. Something's got to be different. So to bring Robbie in to run the same offense when you know he's not as good a passer, he's not as accurate, He doesn't see the field. He doesn't make quite the same decisions that Peyton Thorne would in terms of accuracy and where the ball should go. From what I've seen of Robbie, he doesn't. He's a good athlete that's got a strong arm, but you don't really know where the ball is going half the time. And so I agree, bringing him in and then trying to run the same stuff, it just felt like a waste. And here's what was also weird. So you pull Peyton Thorne in that game and you put Robbie in. And then what do you do in the fourth quarter?
You start
5:55 in the fourth quarter. It's 3rd and 25. Here comes Peyton Thorne back in the game.
On a 3rd and
3rd and 25 to throw a screen pass to Rivaldo Fairweather. What the hell? I mean, if you're going to pull him, you're going to pull him. And then the fourth quarter, you're like, 3rd and 25. Let's put Peyton back in to throw a screen. What? Why? What? I mean, I guess they're thinking put Peyton 3rd and 25. If we put Peyton in, they're going to think we're going to take a shot. They're going to back up, but really all we're going to do is dump it down. And you're overthinking it. But it's like, if I'm Peyton, I'm going, guys, you pulled me, and then you put me back in with 6 minutes to go in the game to throw a screen to the tight end on 3rd and 25. What are we doing? I mean, like, it's just weird stuff. The play to Damari Alston, the one he got hurt on, thought the play call was terrible. Yep. The way the defense is set up, you toss it out there, you set him up for failure.
The reason I didn't like that play is because they were having so much success running the ball on that drive.
Yeah.
Inside the tackles. And I get it. I get why he did it. He's, trying to loosen up the box a little bit now that they've hit him on a few run plays. But, that's another one of those where Brandon Frazier's sort of new to this, and we've never seen him do it, and it's like he's got to deal with a blitzing corner who's a lot quicker than him, and you get in that bind right there, and it's like, maybe just it's almost like that was a little bit of a risk, and you're like, can you just be safe right there? I mean, it was working what we had going on. It's so hard to criticize a game like this. It really is, in my opinion. I struggle with it because there's so many things that I would have done differently. I feel like, but who knows, because I'll never be in that situation. So I struggle with, even after watching the plays and going back through and scripting each play. I mean, I can find bright spots. I can find really bad stuff. And it's like, if you could just do this, so it's difficult for me. It really is.
Yeah. I try to stay away from play calling criticisms because I don't always know. My two biggest criticisms are not knowing your identity and pulling Peyton Thorne. I just think we're still going, where is Peyton Thorne on his journey of development? I mean, if I were to go take his total snaps in 4 games and really forget UMass and Stanford, like those count, but those are that's a game situation. Those might be easier than playing your own practice, your own team defense, like playing UMass and Stanford. Peyton Thorne's played 2 Power 5 opponents while at Auburn, and he hasn't finished a game in either. He hadn't even come close. And I just it's hard for me to listen to criticism about we don't know our identity when you, as the coaches, are rotating quarterbacks and you're affecting, to me, the ability to find your identity. Like, you're like, well, we don't know our identity. Well, you're playing 2 quarterbacks that are very different. And I would assume you're probably struggling with your identity. Pick one. Pick an identity. That's where you start, right? Like, I don't understand. Do you think you're going to go out and just call plays and like an identity is just going to magically rain down from the heavens? Like, oh, there's our identity. I mean, figure out what it is, right? Like, here's who we are. We're this quarterback. We're Peyton Thorne. And then we're going to build around his strengths, and then we're going to build around the offensive line strengths or Jarquez Hunter and whatever that is. That give Will Friend and those guys credit. That's what they did at the end of last year. They said, all right, well, here's pretty much what we can do. So this is what we're going to do. Good or bad. And they got the most out of whatever that was at the end of the year. and you almost beat Mississippi State. You beat Texas A&M. I mean, they could have been 3-1 during that stretch, and you even manufactured points on Alabama that I didn't think they could do, because they just said, "Here's who we are. We're gonna pick an identity." So I don't get the thing. I just don't get the we're trying to figure out our identity, and then you're rotating quarterbacks. It's like, well, I'd probably pick something, probably figure it out, and then try to get good at it. And it's not going to happen by pulling guys. And so, look, now you got Georgia. What you're not going to start with. I mean, good luck. What are you going to do? You've now pulled Peyton Thorne twice. So if confidence is an issue with him, guess what? If confidence is an issue with him, you did nothing but hurt that when you yanked him in the third quarter. And then you put Robbie in, and he had really no success either. So now you're going to Georgia with two quarterbacks that neither of them have any success. Neither of them have any confidence. I mean, what in the world's your game plan now? You're going to go find your identity against Georgia?
Which, I would label myself as not much of an overreactor. I think I would. I think I don't overreact, when it comes to these kind of games. But I do understand the fans' frustration right now, and there's a lot of it. I think it's somewhat warranted because of how ugly that game was, number one, because there were opportunities to make touchdowns and get points on the board. I mean, even taking a sack when you're in field goal range, stuff like that. That's it's almost inexcusable. But now and then you turn around, you look at the schedule and who you got next in the next week, and you're like, my gosh, we are in a trap right now. Like, this is a trap. and there's really not like a light at the end of the tunnel at the moment. You get into a better stretch of the schedule after those three, after these two coming up. But it's like, man, is that going to ruin everything? Is that going to ruin the entire composure of the team, the morale? Is that going to, are they, so it's sort of, you're in a really, really rough spot right now. And it feels like a trap to Auburn fans. And that's why they're the most frustrated, I think. But again, I do find positives in the defense. I find positives in some of the scheme, knowing that, hey, they can scheme guys open. They can get some of these plays to work. They could get some success in the run game. Hey, the defensive line actually did stand up and make some stops when they had to do it. I think those are all positives moving forward. It's not going to look good against Georgia. It's not going to look good against LSU. But who knows? I mean, you get some things like that going. You're not asking for, to build the Great Wall of China by doing those things. Those are kind of simple things. And
feels like it.
Yeah, it feels like it right now. And it's early. So those are kind of simple things from a coaching standpoint. And if you can get a few of those things to work, then you might find you a win against some of these back half schedules games. But, right now it just feels hopeless. And you got to ride through it a little bit right now. And we pointed it out before the season. Hey, that stretch is going to be bad, guys. It's going to be bad. If you just said, hey, Auburn's going to lose by 17 against A&M before the season started, I'm sure fans would have gone, I guess that's understandable with where we're at. But it's too hard to see past how ugly the actual game was.
Yeah, it was brutal. I think fans had talked themselves into going and competing. Remember last week on Monday, on the beginning of the week, we talked, and I was like, I don't feel good. It feels like it's going to be a blowout. And I should have just stuck with that feeling.
Yeah, right.
Because then the week went on, and I thought, well, by the time we did the podcast, I'm like, I think there will be some opportunities for Auburn. And to be fair, there were some opportunities, but there were not many. I mean, outside of the Jay Fair, there weren't a bunch of glaring opportunities for Auburn to make plays. There was a couple, but it was a lot worse than I thought.
Let me say this real quick because I got to get it in. So that was somewhat of an out and up with a switch route, the play that they ran with Jay Fair there that he missed. The very play before that was the little dump off in the flats to Rivaldo Fairweather. They did the out and up with Jay Fair on that play, and he was waving his hand like this, wide open. Peyton Thorne never looked at it. So I credit Philip Montgomery for going, hey, We had something right there. I'm going to do it the next play. Guess what? Wide open again.
Makes it worse.
I got it scripted right here, man. Hey,
It
he
makes
did
it worse
twice.
because it was there. It makes it worse because Peyton. It wasn't like so. That kind of makes it worse. Because
Right. I mean,
that they called the play and they went in the huddle and Jay was like, "Listen, I was there." So like Peyton's like, "It's gonna be there." It's not like a play. Peyton looked his head up and was like, "Oh my god," he knew. That means he knew where he was going, and he overthrew it. Right?
well, I don't know if Peyton knew because his eyes were on Rivaldo Fairweather the whole time on that play. I
But when
mean,
they come back to the huddle, I'm sure Jay was like, "Listen, I was. Oh, what's the play? We're running. I was a wide open dude.
they
It was
didn't
coming
huddle.
to me."
They don't huddle.
Oh, they just ran into it. That's true.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that's true.
the credit has to go to Philip Montgomery there. He saw it. He
Yeah.
drew it up again, put it on the other side of the field. It worked. Just couldn't get it to go, man. So and you just in times like these, I like to find where credit needs to go and where blame needs to go, and I think that is the best way to work through something like this. That's just the way that I've always done it.
Yeah, I do think I would say the only things that are overreactions is criticizing Philip Montgomery's play calling. I don't know. I mean, I mentioned a couple of plays, but I am not going to criticize overall play calling or game plan. I don't. I'm not in the meetings, and I'm not an
Right.
offensive play caller. Those guys are playing chess. There's a reason they do stuff.
Sure.
Philip Montgomery's done this for a long time. Hugh Freeze has done this for a long time. So I'm not going to jump to Philip Montgomery is past his prime and Freeze needs to take over play calling. No, 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 no. I'm not there on that. I'm not there on that. And I don't think anybody really, unless you're a legit offensive college football mind and you go study the film, okay, then you can watch that and go, okay, there's some conceptual problems here. There's some philosophical issues. There's some things that are doing that you should not do as a play caller, but I don't know those things. And so people have talked about Freeze and should he get more involved or less involved? And again, by the way, that goes back to talent. By the way, if you're going to tell me it's a talent gap, then don't also come tell me I'm going to be more involved in offensive meetings or play calling. Well, okay, so if you're telling me that those are potential factors, those have nothing to do with talent. Again, so if you're saying, well, we don't have talent, and then you're also going, but also Free should take over play calling. Well, then that means you have a problem with play calling. That's not talent. Like either talent's the problem, the only problem, or there's a bunch of things. And I think there's a congruent of things that happened in College Station. And Free said it might have been after Cal. I think it was after Cal. He came out and said, I didn't have really an issue with play calling in the Cal game at all. Thought most of that stuff was good play calls. I think he came out and said that after that game. It was like, I thought there was a lot of good play, a lot of plays that could have worked. I don't know what he'll say on Monday after this one. He'll probably say something similar. I think there probably were some plays that had opportunities. A missed block here, or keep your eyes downfield, or you just locked on the wrong guy. There probably were more opportunities than we think. I just don't like hearing the bigger picture stuff about identity and 4 games into the year when you're pulling your starter when things are going wrong. I mean, that's my biggest issue. I don't see how you're going to find your identity and find rhythm when you keep pulling Peyton Thorne. I don't. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. You got a guy struggling. It's just not that. That's probably my biggest issue. Pick one and go with it. Pick an identity. Like you had a lot of time to figure out what this team's good at and what they're not good at. I mean, you should know. You're with these guys every day. You watched film on the portal guys you brought in, Fairweather, Hooks. You know what they're good at.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, and you're right. You're a third of the way through the year, and next up's Georgia. So good luck with that. I mean, again, Georgia, make up your mind, pick a quarterback, ride or die with something or somebody. And if you get beat 30-3 by Georgia, so be it, as long as you say, here's who we're going to be, here's our guy, and we're going to commit to it right this second. And if that means getting your ass kicked against Georgia, okay. as long as that means you're making some kind of forward progress with understanding who your offense is, like consistently, and not going scattered around, rotate this guy and this guy. If you come out of Georgia and you keep losing games and you come out of this, if you come out of another loss going, well, you lost to Georgia, and you come out of that going, okay, you lost the game. And once again, your quarterback struggled. Once again, you played two quarterbacks and still don't know what we're good at. You're just wasting opportunities. You know, what did Nick Saban say? I hate to quote Nick Saban on this podcast, but what did he say after Texas? He goes, "You never waste a failure." And that is a true thing. Game, life, whatever. And I feel like Auburn, I mean, we'll see. I won't say they've wasted it yet because they got a week to prepare and they can get ready for Georgia. But you don't want to waste that opportunity of yeah, it went bad, but try to figure something out. The only good thing is after Georgia, you get a bye. I mean, which to me is like why you should have committed to something against A&M, but commit to something against Georgia, do it. Then you get a bye. You have another week. You have a week off. You have 2 weeks to prepare for LSU. This is when you got to go all in on something. And by LSU, it could look very different if you'll just commit to something or somebody. By the time you go into Baton Rouge, you could have leading up to Georgia, you have 3 weeks of practice of committing to an identity and trying to figure something out and being convicted on something.
Yeah. Yeah, the identity thing is very important. I guess it is the other annoying thing about it is that, you go to the portal and there is the thought there, like it may be hard to get everybody together when you have all these new players, and then you see another team in college football that's able to do it. So that's what, there's always an outlier. But I mean, sometimes these ugly games happen, and then another one comes out of nowhere, and you're like, how is that possible that you got that from that? So
Yeah.
I'm not, again, I'm not trying to overreact or anything. I think the game was as sloppy as it possibly could be. I think quarterback play was terrible. But I do see some places where Auburn could improve on it and use. Like, I do believe that Auburn's going to be in most every single game on their schedule because the defense can hang in there. So if that's going on, you have to think at some point there's a chance for the offense to get it together. At least there's more opportunities, is what I'm trying to say. At least you didn't lose it to Cal, right?
Oh, yeah. Defense desperately needs to get through the next week. More, just they're banged up. I mean, Donovan's off and down. I don't know how many times. Puckett banged his shoulder up. Man, that defense needs. They need to get through Georgia, no worse for the wear, and then they need to get into that bye week and try to get
healthy
and try to get some guys healthy. But yeah, it's going to be tough going against Georgia, and then of course LSU in a couple of weeks, who's obviously really capable of scoring. So we'll see. We'll see what Hugh Freeze has got to say this week about this Auburn team. Because you're looking at it now. I mean, Mississippi State, right? They pop back up off the mat. They'll score 30 in Columbia. South Carolina's nothing special, but Mississippi State's, 30 in a conference game. I wouldn't predict Auburn to do that anytime soon. Vanderbilt, you better pay attention to what Vanderbilt's doing. They lost to Kentucky. Kentucky's really good, but Vanderbilt scored in every game they've played. They've put up points, and if not for turnovers, Vanderbilt's record could be even better. Could be better than it is. I'm just telling you, that offense. If Auburn goes and plays like that on offense, they won't win a conference game. They'll go to Nashville in November when it's a little cooler and it's cold, and they'll go mess around and lose that game. Or they'll come home against Mississippi State and they'll lose that game. Like, that's how bad that offensive performance is and what you got ahead of you. So you better figure it out against Georgia. Like, you better do something and start to figure something out against Georgia and LSU. Because look, you're the underdog in those two games anyway. You got nothing to lose. You're damn near a 3-touchdown underdog at home against Georgia. And then you're going to go at LSU and you're going to be the same type of underdog. So, throw caution to the wind. And if you got to take your lumps, take your lumps. It makes me think I thought about this last night. it makes and about this whole when I'm thinking about pulling Peyton Thorne. 2013, I'm in Baton Rouge. I'm at Tiger Stadium when Auburn was down, I think 21-0 at halftime. I'm looking it up to make sure what that halftime score was. Let's see. Yeah, it's 21-0 LSU at halftime in Baton Rouge, 2013. LSU ranked 6th in the country. It would have been, I think, pretty easy. Gus Malzahn's first year. Auburn is a handful of games into the season. It'd have been easy for Gus Malzahn to panic and go, I don't know about Nick Marshall. I'm not sure if what I'm trying to do here is working. I think he had thrown a pick in the first half of that game. Not good. But what did he do? He left him in. He ran his stuff, and he said, we're going to run it, and we're going to get better. They pop out in the second half. They score 21 second-half points in Baton Rouge. They make that a game. They end up losing 35-21, but I think it was 28-21. Like they probably put up close to 300 yards in the second half. That second half in Baton Rouge changed the trajectory of that entire season. It's what led to Auburn being in the Rose Bowl. They figured something out in the second half of what Nick Marshall can do, what Trey Mason can do, how that offense can work. They figured it out in the middle of a game. It started to click. And they pummeled LSU running the football in the second half of that game. They were just down 3 touchdowns, and so they couldn't come back. But that changed everything about that season. And I feel like that's what I feel like pulling Peyton Thorne in the third quarter in College Station, I feel like that is what you missed that opportunity. You're down 20-3, commit to your stuff and do it. And you don't know. Maybe in a drive or two, it starts to click and it starts to work. And you find something that you can then build on for the rest of the year. It would have been easy for Malzahn to go, oh boy, putting Nick Marshall at quarterback. Maybe this experiment's not quite working. But it clicked in the middle of a game and it changed everything. And so I just thought about that last night. Like when you pull a guy, and when it's 23, you pull him, you forget it. You're never going to have those aha moments. You're never going to start to figure out your identity if you're like, whoop, just kidding, go to this guy. Whoop, just kidding, go to this guy. I mean, it's like gambling, right? Like you got to commit. If you go in there, just do a little bit, you're never going to win, right? Like you're going to always lose.
Yeah.
You got to commit to it and it'll click and you can win big.
I think one thing we totally agree on is that it is not time for I just don't think one loss, even though the offense has been bad in another game, I don't think one loss against a team you were an underdog to in your first year, in your fourth game as head coach at Auburn, it's time for a knee-jerk reaction to go ahead and make a quarterback change. I think Peyton Thorne should be the starter against Georgia. And I think probably against LSU too. And I think you need to assess him very closely in those games. And it's not necessarily how many yards does he throw or what's his completion percentage. Does he calm down? Does he feel more comfortable? Does he act like, okay, we got that A&M one out of the way. I got some pressure off of me now. Let me chill out and play football. Run the offense. Get some things going. Finish drives. It's not time to pull him. That's what we agree on, I think, the most.
Yeah, I agree. And he's got another year of eligibility. Like, you got to know this. Let him go through Georgia. Let him go through LSU. Take your lumps if that's what it takes. Though, to me, the way you permanently pull Peyton Thorne is if the issue with the eyes downfield, if you're like, okay, if it's almost like Yips is a golfer. Or I don't know if people follow baseball. If you remember Rick Ankiel for the Cardinals years ago, all of a sudden Rick Ankiel couldn't throw the ball. He was a pitcher, really good pitcher, and out of nowhere he literally couldn't throw a strike. Like he had to almost quit baseball. Like he was airman. It was unbelievable. I mean, it was a mental block. Unless you think that's what's going on, but you can't assess that to get 2 quarters into A&M. Play Georgia, play LSU, and if he's doing that, and you're going, okay. There's a mental block now all of a sudden. Now Peyton Thorne's literally just looking down, or he's not looking downfield at all. Like, I can't fix this. He needs a dramatic change. Then that's something I can understand making a pull and trying to do a shift with. But 2 quarters in, can't happen. Eugene Asante was great. 9
Yeah.
tackles. I wrote that. I was like, well, I think my prediction now is that he leads the team in tackles. He's double digits ahead of Kaufman and Larry Nixon, who are second and third on the team. He's on pace for
Larry Nixon can play too.
He played well, right, dude? I said on Twitter, man, and I know at this point everybody was kind of checked out, but him chasing Le'Veon Moss down,
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
freaking impressive.
Yeah, it was.
79 yards down the field.
And he plays good in the box. I think he's just a good box linebacker, and I hadn't seen one since Jacoby McClain. So happy to see that. That is encouraging.
Yeah. So Asante's playing well, on pace for over 100 tackles. Would be the first player since Jacoby McClain in 2020 to go over 100 tackles. At this point, it would probably just be an injury that would keep Asante from doing it, because he's all over the place. And if he does that, I think he could definitely be a third team linebacker, maybe even second team All SEC type player if he can.
Oh, he's definitely working his way toward a draft pick.
Yeah.
Says
And his
Jim
speed
Nick.
was nice, that fumble. I mean, his burst when he got first probably 30, 40 yards, that he was moving.
And then he almost got hawked by Max Johnson, but he didn't. That's the important thing here.
Max Johnson's a good athlete and had the angle.
He almost got tripped by Jimbo Fisher.
Dude, what the heck? That was – I mean, Jimbo was probably already out there, but can you imagine what – I guess – is that one of the – I guess it would have been a penalty. It probably would have been –
It should have been
a penalty tacked on to wherever Asante is tackled. But how much – if you're Fisher at that point, why don't you just tackle him?
How is that
not a coach? You're like, no.
How is that not a penalty? How's that possible?
Yeah, it should have been.
He's standing
and then Auburn could wave it off.
I mean, that was more of a penalty than the 2 holding calls on Britton and Hunter. I mean, my God.
That is amazing, right? Like, coach on the field, we had to run around him, not a penalty. Carquest Hunter making a great block, quite subjective.
At least he didn't try to tackle him. I'm thankful for that.
Dude, what would have been great is I don't want to say that, because if Asante would have trucked him, Jimbo Fisher would be injured, would be actually hurt. So
I like the series Friday Night Lights, but as it kept going on, I do love the show, but it got a little cheesy at times, and one of the reasons because they had a coach on the field that tackled a guy in an episode. That's all I could think about when I saw Jimbo standing there. I mean, stay on the sideline, dude. You never. That's almost an analogy to what you're saying with pulling Peyton Thorne. Like, hey, you never know what might happen.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
That would have been wild. What's funny is that he was so far out. Asante ran between him and the sideline. He didn't. It's like he ran around him on the field. Jimbo was so far out that Asante was like, well, there's actually more room towards the sideline to run by you than on the field side. We'll see. We'll listen to what Hugh Freeze says on Monday, and go for there as Auburn prepares for Georgia. And we'll see. We'll see what happens. Make sure you're at auburnlive.com. A lot of coverage from the game, obviously already up, and more to come. And then we'll immediately roll into Georgia week. Georgia comes in as the number 1 team in the country, 17+ point favorite. And looks like they're sort of settling into what they want to be offensively and all that good stuff. Of course, defensively, they're always pretty good. So massive test ahead. I didn't do game time again. Dadgummit. Zach, throw it with game time real quick.
There it is.
GameTime.co. Go check them out. Hopefully people are still tuning in. I should have thrown them out there earlier. GameTime.co, tickets for games and concerts and events and comedy shows and all that good stuff. Last minute type stuff. That's what they're really good at. Last minute type tickets. Go check them out. Use the promo code War Eagle and you get 20% off your first purchase. GameTime.co. Awesome place to go get tickets. And then, of course, our main sponsor, Session Cocktail. Go check them out downtown Auburn on Magnolia Avenue. Session Cocktail. Go have a drink. I'll probably be there at some point this week, I'm sure. So if anybody listens and you live in Auburn or you're ever in Auburn and you end up there, tell them that you heard about them through Auburn Live. That would just be awesome. And maybe you'll see me there. Come say hey. All right, let's roll. AuburnLive.com. Make sure you're there. $1 for a month. We're actually about to start running a promo. I guess I can say it here. What is it?
Yeah, it's 50% off an annual. Still $1 for 1 month too.
There you go. And it's only for this week, I think. I think it's like a big game special, 50% off for an annual subscription just for this week before the Georgia game. I don't know if people are jacked about it now.
Tell you what,
but
the game may not be great, but the recruits will be there.
There you go. There you go. I'm just going to do my best to cover the team and try to infuse a little bit of optimism if I can, if it's there. It's a good week maybe to focus on recruiting in the future. Might be a good week to shift focus towards recruiting and be because should be a big one. Should be a great atmosphere and a big one and all that good stuff. Yeah. All right. Let's roll. For Cole, I'm Justin. We appreciate you guys, and we will see you next time. Bye.